Let's talk about some of the rules of exponents and how to use them. The first rule is that if you have x to the m power times x to the n power, as long as the bases are the same and you're multiplying the terms, you need to add the powers. So it'd be m plus n. So an example of that would be something like if you had 10 to the 4th power times 10 to the 8th power. You would take the bases and check and make sure they're the same, and since they are, we are going to just multiply. When we multiply, we're just going to add the powers. So it would be 10 to the 12th. You don't do anything with the base on this. The next rule of exponents is similar to the multiplication rule. If you have x to the m power over x to the n power, then instead of multiplication where you add the powers, you're dividing, so you will subtract the powers. Okay. And a good rule of thumb on this is whatever is the bigger number between m and m, you want to subtract the smaller from the bigger. So let's look at two examples on that. Here, let's say I have x to the 4th over x to the 2nd. So you would take x to the 4th and x to the 2nd, so you would subtract the powers, so it would be x 4 minus 2, which would be x squared. Now if you have the powers bigger on the bottom, so let's say I have x to the 3 over x to the 10th. What you will want to do is you'll want to bring the power on the bottom there, 10 minus 3, which would give you 1 over x to the 7th. So depending on if the numerator or the denominator's power is bigger, that's where you would want to bring the whole expression. So along those lines, here we have rule number 3, which is if I have x to a negative power, you will want to reciprocate that power, the whole entire term. So if it's x to the negative n, it's going to be 1 over x to the n. So if I have, for example, 2 to the negative 3rd power, we're going to say that is 1 over 2 to the 3rd, which 2 to the 3rd we know is 8, so it would be 1/8. If I have 2 to the, let's actually say 1 over 2 to the negative 10th power, you would want to take 2 to the negative 10 and you're going to move the place it is in the fraction. So we're going to reciprocate that 2, which means I'm going to bring that 2 up, so it's going to be 2 to the 10th power. So let's look at one more example here. So let's say I have x to the 4th over y to the negative 3rd power. That's supposed to be a 3. So because the y is a negative power, you want to bring the y up, so that would end up being x to the 4th, y to the negative 3. Now if it's in the denominator and then it's in, oh sorry, that's a positive 3. If it's in the denominator with a negative power and you bring it up, you don't need to write a denominator sign anymore. However, if it starts out without a denominator but it is a negative power, you need to create that denominator, which is what we saw in this problem right here. Alright, rule 4 involves having an expression here, x to the m, and we're going to take all of it to the n power. So remember that when I'm dealing with a number to another power, what we're going to do is you are going to multiply the powers. Okay, so let's say I have, let's just use x to the 3rd to the 7th power. We would end up with x, 3 times 7 is 21. Or if I have x to the 10th to the 1/5 power. 10 times 1/5 is x to the 2nd. Alright, let's look at simplifying one that has multiple processes to it. So let's say I have x to the 3rd, y to the -2, all to the 4th power. And I want to simplify this as far as I can. I'm going to distribute the 4 power to each thing. So we have x to the 12th, y to the -8. However, we don't want to keep any negative powers, so that's going to be x to the 12th over y to the 8th power. Let's look at one more rule of exponents, and this one's a little bit tricky. So let's see, we have rule number 5 would be if you have x to the 1 over m power, that means that you have a root. So that would be the nth root of x. And you can switch back and forth between both of these. This is mostly useful in simplifying fractions. So let's look at if you have something like 2, let's go 25 to the 1/2 power. What you're really doing is you're just taking the square root of 25. So it would be the square root of 25, which of course is 5. Now you can add multiple powers in that. So let me think about one here. Let's go 16 to the 5/4 power. So 16 to the 5/4 power. What you would do is you're going to take first, you're going to work with the root part. So you're going to go 16 to the 1/4 first. So it's going to be 16 to the 1/4 root, and then take that to the 5th power. So I'm breaking up my exponent into the whole part and the fraction part. So we can figure out that 16 to the 1/4, which means the 4th root of 16 to the 5th power. And we always want to break it down first and then build it back up. So we have the 4th root of 16 is 2. So that ends up being 2, and then 2 to the 5th power. So 2 to the 5th power would equal 32. So whenever you do have a fraction as a power, go 1 over the denominator first and take that root, and then do the numerator at the end. Oops, I wrote 35. That's a 32. Okay, so the 32. Alright, so let's look at one example where we combine all the rules, except for the last rule is not included in this. So when you want to simplify an expression like this, there are a couple ways to do it, but I like to stick with PEMDAS, so doing inside the parentheses first, and then do the exponent, and then of course any multiplication, division, addition, or subtraction. So let's go ahead here. we're going to combine the x terms and the y terms first. So, because I have x to the 4th over x squared, that ends up being x to the 2nd power because I subtract them. And then I have y to the negative 2 over y to the 4th. So I have y, let's bring that 2 down, and I'm going to subtract negative 2 from 4, so that would be y to the 6th. And then we're going to take that to the negative 3 power. Now after that, let's go ahead and we've simplified the inside. We're going to distribute this power now. So we have here x to the negative 6 over x to the negative 18. You need to remember that you can't have negative powers, so if it's negative, you need to flip the side of the fraction sign it's on. So we'll bring the y up as y to the 18th, and the x down as x to the 6th. And that would be our final answer.